Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
How you doing, Eric?
You know, I'm doing really good. I finished up a game jam with a few friends from Big Scalber Discord.
So I don't know anything about what you guys finished. So what did you guys get done?
We did a tower defense. So that first off, it was the Game Dev JS jam. The theme was machines. And you can kind of interpret that however you want. And the only real rule was it has to run on the web. So that's so you could do WebAssembly, you could do whatever as long as it runs on the web. We did a tower defense game where we took the Balatro shop, and the way that you upgrade towers is you buy things from the shop, but you go into the tower and then you have the Diablo inventory system where you have to place parts for your towers in there, and then the flimsy lore is that it's the machines are uprising, so you got to defend yourself. So you collect parts of the machines and you sell them so that you can buy more things and can build more towers and stuff like that. But it turned out really well. A lot of people like the Diablo tower upgrade mechanic. So my plan is to polish it up a little bit, and then at Minibar this weekend we'll show it off.
Yeah, it felt like the purpose of the game jam for you guys was really as a vehicle to build this Diablo system.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is
for
cool.
me at least.
Yeah, because I thought you might have said the way that you were going that you not only took the Balatro shop mechanic, but you also upgrade your towers through cards or something like that. But no.
Yeah, we were thinking about that. Yeah. The cards fell on the table and we didn't wind up doing that. But
yeah, that's all cool. That's cool.
I think if we add more to it, maybe the cards will come back.
Well, it's fun. I'm glad that people like it.
And then we had a really cool community PR from Nimgobble, which is a great name. But they added some gamepad button up event. So we never had a button up event on the gamepad buttons. We only had the button down event.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So now you get a gamepad up and down.
Nice. So when someone is holding a button on the gamepad, now you can just detect that.
Yep. Between the down and the up, you got to hold.
Cool. Very nice.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I've just been trying to get this course out the door because it is due on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's mostly what I've been doing. I did take a small detour last week because we've kind of discussed this on the podcast, but mostly offline we've been talking about it. But the AI unit economics bubble burst thing seems like it's coming along at a nice clip because actually today, and we're not going to talk about this because this is for next week's news, but GitHub Copilot is moving to usage-based billing, and Anthropic has been nerfing their usage limits pretty hard. I'm on the pro plan, and within 2 or 3 messages, I've used up my session limit for a few hours or whatever. And I'm doing some intense stuff, but that's 2 or 3 messages, and it's your usage will reset in 4 hours. I'm okay, cool. So I was you know what? How far have local models come? Because that would be great. They're privacy centric. They're open source, and maybe they're comparable to some of these frontier models. Now, of course, the frontier models are going to have way more capabilities, but I actually did do some adventures in local LLM. So I got it set up on my MacBook. I got LM Studio, which is one of the open source tools you can use. Ollama, of course, is probably the OG one that people use.
Mm-hmm.
But LM Studio has a nice kind of interface, and I'm using the latest Qwen 3.6 model. But that's kind of what I got distracted by that this weekend.
Yeah, anecdotally in my sphere, I think 3 or 4 of my good friends, all independently of each other, have been using Quen for coding. Like,
Yeah.
and all of them are tinfoil hat people. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's nice. I mean, it feels good to use a local model because I'm just using my GPU. I'm not using GPUs that run in a data center, using up energy and stuff like that. And I'm not sending money to, these frontier providers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, more to share, about that. We'll probably talk more about that as I get more into it. But should we get into the news for the week of April 20th, 2026?
We should indeed. And there's a big piece of news that dropped right when we published the last episode, and that's
right.
The TypeScript 7 beta dropped.
Yeah, TypeScript 7 beta. So they are calling it a beta. But one thing that they do say in the blog post is don't let the beta tag fool you. You could probably start using this day to day. And someone replied to Jake Bailey on BlueSky, and they're like, well, why call it a beta then? And he's like, because it's really hard to get people to use new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they're calling it a beta. And it's still under the TypeScript native preview NPM package.
Yeah, and in the blog post they say it'll eventually be TypeScript in a future release. So it'll eventually take over the name that you might expect. And Daniel also points out in this blog post that it's highly stable, highly compatible, and ready to be put to the test in your daily workflows in CI pipelines today, with today italicized.
That's right. And we can just read off some of the case studies or teams that they've tried this at. Obviously, they have a lot of internal Microsoft teams, but they've got companies like Bloomberg, Canva, Figma, Google, Lattice, Linear, Miro, Notion, Slack, Vanta, Vercel, Void Zero, and more have all tried out pre-release builds of TypeScript 7 on their code bases, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, with many teams reporting similar speedups, shaving off a majority of their build times and enjoying a much more lightweight and fluid editing experience. So that's why they feel like it's in good shape.
They are still touting the 10x, like the order of magnitude speed up, which is great.
So we should probably talk about some of the things that they have in this blog post, such as running it side by side with TypeScript 6.0. So they say, to help you transition from TypeScript 6 to TypeScript 7, this beta release is available through the native preview package, which we just said. This enables easy validation comparing TSC and TSGO. However, the stable release of 7 will be published under the TypeScript package and will use the TSC entry point. So you're going to be asking at that point which TSC is which. So as part of the 6.7 transition process, we published a new compatibility package, TypeScript/TypeScript 6. And sorry, that's at TypeScript/TypeScript 6. This package exposes a new entry point TSC 6, so that if needed, you can run the next release of 7.0, which will be TSC, side by side without naming conflicts. And it'll also re-export the TypeScript 6 API. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's nice. So you'll be able to do like TSC 6 if you just want to run them side by side, which is cool.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense because a lot of tooling will still rely on the programmatic API in 6.0, which is the JavaScript version. So that makes a lot of sense. Later on in the blog post, they do mention that they plan on adding more work to the API as upcoming work in the TypeScript 7.1 release and later. So right now, that's not part of the 7 beta.
Yeah, and that won't affect like consumers of TypeScript, like app developers, I would say. That's more for developers who are making dev tools for TypeScript. That really affects them. It's going to affect you in ways that are like whatever dev tool you might be using that works with TypeScript 6 might not work with 7 until 7.1 or later. So like TypeDoc, for example, is probably a good example of what might not work yet. I'm not sure. Maybe we should check, but I don't think it's compatible yet.
Yeah. And I imagine that this compatibility package will help ease that.
Yes.
For as long as that gap will be there, is there'll need to be some amount of JavaScript API handoff.
That's right. So do we want to talk a little bit about what makes TypeScript 7 faster?
Yeah. One of the big things is parallelization. So one advantage of switching to Go is you can do stuff in parallel. If you listen to our earlier show, they were talking about, splitting up the type checking, which takes a long time. Like type checking has a lot of complex dependencies. They were able to spin up multiple workers to do type check at the same time. That does speed things up. Now you can go dash checkers and you can specify how many you want.
Yeah.
The default number is 4, but you can give it more. Like if you have more cores or fewer cores, like for example in a CI runner you may only have 2 or 1. You can go to town. Also, they added a project reference builder parallelization, so you can now parallelize builds within a project. So this is something I don't think we talked about before. This is brand new as far as I know, but you can do dash builders, and you can control the number of parallel project reference builders that can run at once. So this is super helpful if you have like a big monorepo with many projects and you don't want to wait for it to chew through each build.
And just to be clear, this is when you're using TypeScript project references.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have to be using that feature for this to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's really cool. Yeah, nice. Those are 2 big changes since our last discussion with the team on the podcast, which you should go listen to. But at that point, it was hard-coded to 4 workers. So now you can just pass a flag and you can customize it. That's pretty sweet. There's also, if you need to, you can also pass a -- single-threaded flag. And they said that this can be useful for debugging or comparing performance with TypeScript 6 and 7, and when orchestrating parallel builds externally, or for running in environments with very limited resources. So you can do the single-threaded mode.
That's
cool.
right.
Yeah.
And then again, 7 is inheriting all of the new behaviors from 6. So we already talked a lot about those behaviors. All of them are good moves. So such as strict is true by default. The module defaults to the evergreen module, which is ESNext. The target defaults to the evergreen ECMAScript version, which is ESNext. And then a whole bunch of other defaults are the sane modern default. So this is a departure from the past. We're inheriting all of the new 6 defaults, and your life will be better.
Yep. Where your life might differ, though, I'm just looking through this, is that if you use JSDoc comments to type your code, there are differences in TypeScript 7 and they're breaking changes. It's for a good reason, though, because they're saying that in 6.0, in the previous code base, there was a lot of compromises and special cases to work well, but now they've reworked their JavaScript support to be much more consistent. But for example, like you can't use values where types are expected, which you've probably run into that error before. So you always have to, you fix it by saying like type of some value. So it's a pretty easy fix. But there is going to be some stuff like that, and you can go through the blog post and go through. They have a changes.md file to capture the differences between 6 and 7 in more detail. And then probably last thing to talk about is the editor integration. So for a long time, they haven't had some of the features like auto imports or inlay hints or code lenses or go to source definition. All that stuff has been added. So you can get that through the TypeScript native preview extension for VS Code. And that gives you the same performance improvements to your editor experience. So hopefully it should feel like a breeze in there.
That's right. And then kind of in the future here, they're expecting in the coming weeks to ship a more efficient version of the -- watch to meet parity on declaration file emit from JavaScript files. And there's also some minor editor feature gaps, such as find all references from the file explorer, some more granular sort imports, removed unused imports, stuff like that. And then also we talked about at the top here that 7.1 is going to bring that programmatic interface. And then the road to 7.0 is going to be them focusing on bug fixes, compatibility, polish, perf improvements. And then the plan is for the stable release of 7.0 to happen within the next 2 months.
Yeah. Which is pretty sweet. That's pretty soon, I would say.
Yeah. No, like they're moving at a good clip.
The summer of TypeScript is coming.
It's you know how it was Brat summer and now it's Type summer.
That's right. Sweet. All right. Should we move on to some other news from Deno? Looks like they have a new Fresh, a minor version for their Fresh framework. And this is their static site generator. But this has some cool new features, some pretty big features. First of all, it's 0 JavaScript by default. And when they say 0, they mean 0. So before, in Fresh 2.2, even if you were doing a static site, there was still a client entry script to bootstrap the islands, like the interactive islands, even if you weren't using interactive islands or partials. So that would amount to about 14 to 22 kilobytes of just raw JavaScript, or 5 to 9 kilobytes of gzipped. So it's not that much, but it was, more than 0. And now in Fresh 2.3, it is actually 0. So if you're not using those, it does not inject anything. So pure 0 by default, which is pretty cool. The other really neat thing is they added the View Transitions API. This is something that I added to my app because it's freaking easy to add, actually. It's really nice. So I did mobile style slide in, slide out transitions inside of a modal dialog because it was not actually going to a new page. But they added the ability to do document view transitions, which is pretty cool. And you can also target individual elements too.
Yeah, view transitions is such a low hanging fruit to really spice up an app and add that extra layer of polish for not a lot of effort.
Yes. They've also added first-class WebSocket support. So you can just do app.ws, and that exposes a WebSocket endpoint, and then you can handle messages on it. Open, message, close. Very Socket.io, I feel like.
Yeah, this looks very much inspired.
Now, this next feature, I'm going to admit, I didn't even know that you could do this. So they've got server-to-browser trace propagation for OpenTelemetry. Apparently, there is a meta tag named traceParent, and if you give it an ID, that will also be sent in any browser-side requests to the server. I did not know that you could do that. That's pretty sweet.
I didn't know that about the meta tag.
Yeah. So in 2.3, it injects the W3C traceParent meta tag into the HTML response, so browser-side telemetry SDKs can connect client spans to the server trace. That is pretty sweet. I'm going to have to go do that in my app.
Yeah. No, I honestly, if you are not using OTel in your apps to do instrumentation, go turn it on.
Yes, go do that now.
Build some dashboards. It'll save you so much time.
Yep. And again, we are seeing the temporal wave going through all of our dev tools. So they've added the temporal API in islands. So Fresh now supports passing all 8 temporal types as island props. So you can pass a temporal value from a route straight through to an island.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. So they are still continuing to work on Fresh. So they say, we're continuing to improve Vite support, upgrading to Vite 8 with roll down. And the other big focus is build time pre-rendering. So if you mark a route with pre-render true, and Fresh can render it to a static HTML during the build. So that's not out quite yet, but that's what they're working on. So that'll be pretty sweet. So that will effectively turn Fresh into a static site generator for pages that don't need a server.
Nice.
Love it.
Next, we have Firefox 150.
Yeah, there's a few things in here. Not everything is worth mentioning, but if you like the new split view feature, which was recently introduced, it just got better. You can now right-click any link and choose Open Link in Split View to open it alongside your current tab. You can also search open tabs when creating a split view and quickly reverse tab positions using the new Reverse Tabs option in the tab context menu. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Firefox has a built-in PDF editor. I didn't know that.
I love that for us because if you, like me, are not a fan of that company that starts with the letter A and ends with Dobie, this is great.
Yeah, and this specifically, it allows you to reorder, copy, paste, delete, and export pages in a PDF. That's huge.
That is the reason I had to pay for Adobe Acrobat. Oh, wait, sorry. We're not talking about them. I had to pay for it once because I had to make a contract and I needed to reorder pages.
That's
so
right.
I had to pay them money. So now that I know about this, I will never pay them money.
Yup. They've also introduced real-time private translations. So if you go to the About Translations page, you can add different instant translations and try it out. So you don't have to go to Google Translate, for example. It just works inside of Firefox, which is kind of cool.
Sweet. I am going to be using that.
And guess what? The built-in VPN that we mentioned last time for 149, now available for users in Canada. So that means that it's currently available in Canada, France, Germany, United Kingdom, and United States. And that's
nice.
Still on a progressive rollout, so you can check that out when you're at the coffee shop next time.
Very cool.
All right. Cool. Should we do some library watches?
We should. Well, this first one is near and dear to my heart, but there's a library out there called TypeScriptToLua, and they just dropped version 136. And what's notable here is that adds TypeScript 6 support.
Do you want to remind people even what Lua is and then what this thing does?
Yeah, that's actually great. So Lua is probably one of the most popular scripting languages for scripting in video games or other software in general, because it's so easy to embed and it has loosey-goosey semantics. It's very easy to write ad hoc scripts for anything like written in C and C++. So Lua is a very popular scripting language to embed for video games or whatever. And TypeScriptToLua, turns out Lua has very similar loosey-goosey semantics to another language that we know, JavaScript. In fact, the semantics are so similar that you can use TypeScript and compile to Lua. And it's mostly okay most of the time.
That's cool.
There are some things that don't map exactly right.
Sure.
But they're few and far between.
Yeah. Very nice. Okay, so next up, I saw this on Reddit. It's pretty hot off the press here. So still baking, I would say. It's still 0.4.4, but it is a brand new TypeScript Go toolchain. And you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean? Well, you remember TS Node, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we did before we had type stripping, right? There are still things that you need TS Node for if you're using TypeScript with Node, for example, like TSX. So this toolchain is called ttsc, which might be confusing, but there's a T before TSC, and it does a few things. So first of all, it uses TypeScript Go under the hood, and there are three things that it does right now. One is ttsc, which is a build, check, and transform. So this lets you. This is basically the same thing as like TSGO, so it kind of wraps that CLI.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that it can do is ttsx, which will execute TypeScript with type checking. So that's different than what Node does, right? Because Node will strip types from whatever script you pass it if it's a TypeScript file. This will execute TypeScript with type checking with TypeScript Go. And because it's built with TypeScript Go, it's 10 times faster than TS Node. And it does type checking that TSX doesn't provide. So that's pretty cool too. So if you were using TSX before to do type checking, or you were using TS Node before, then you probably want to check this project out. So yeah, it does take the TypeScript native preview as a dependency, but otherwise you can say like ttsx source index.ts, and it runs it with the TypeScript Go compiler and Node. So that's pretty sweet.
That is pretty sweet. I might be reaching for that soon.
All right. Next up, this is another thing I saw on Reddit. So we've talked about WebMCP before. This is like a draft W3C proposal spec, which essentially provides a web API for exposing MCP server tools. So you can think of this as like, can I have Claude talk to the web page that I'm looking at right now and do stuff with it as if it was an MCP server? So the web page has to support exposing tools. And this is different than like agent computer use, where it emulates like a mouse moving around the screen and like pointing and finding stuff, or trying to use like Puppeteer or Playwright or Cypress or whatever to like target elements with like a selector, CSS selector. This is different. So this is saying I'm going to expose some JavaScript that I write myself as the web developer, and it's going to be exposed to the AI agent like an MCP server, so it'll look like tools. So I'll give you a good example. Let's say you're on Gmail. There might be a send email tool, or a get drafts tool, or a send drafts tool, or a write drafts tool, or or a search tool, all that kind of stuff. So you don't have to like play with the UI. It's just implemented inside Gmail itself and then exposed to Claude as a bunch of tools it can use. Okay, all that setup, because this library does that, but it's all in TypeScript and it works right now with any AI client that supports MCP. And the way that it works is that it's a framework. It's called Tesseron. And basically, you write the same stuff inside of your app using Tesseron. And then you also have to run the Tesseron gateway server. And that's the magic that basically interfaces between the AI tool and the browser, because it sets up like a WebSocket connection. So it's kind of cool in like the way that it works. It kind of brings you like WebMCP today, rather than having to wait and see what other tools might implement WebMCP. Right now, I think it's only Chrome and experimental, and only with like Claude Desktop, I think, is the only thing that supports it.
Yeah, so this would be a really interesting, if you're going to play around with WebMCP, this looks like a great place to experiment.
Yes. Yep. So it just communicates through WebSockets, and then it runs the gateway as an MCP server that can then talk to an agent. So it's pretty clever. So it's kind of like a bridge. But yeah, it's pretty neat.
This next one is really cool. This is a new CLI library in TypeScript called Stricli. It's STRICLI, Stricli. I imagine that's how it's pronounced. I'm just guessing. But it's from Bloomberg, and you can generate new CLIs with this little fantastic library.
Yep. It's pretty small, right? Doesn't have any dependencies, and it has a limited scope of features, but it does have full TypeScript support for named flags, positional arguments. You can define them once, and then they flow through the whole application. It's also ready with code splitting, so command implementations are defined separately from their parameters, so you can async import them and code split with ESM build tools, which is really nice. So you could have a really large CLI, but you're not like loading it all at once. And they also have optional dependency injection, which is cool, in a single context object.
Yeah, pretty slick stuff. Like this is very simple to read. Like, you would not be surprised. It's very much like how I like to build APIs. It's like, hey, I have a builder. I'm going to pass it an option bag, and it's got routes, create, rename, delete, and then you pass it the object that implements those.
Yep. And I think it makes sense. It comes out of their experience building both public tools and internal CLI tools in Bloomberg. So this, I feel like, comes from a place of like, we've tried a lot of stuff, and this is what we've landed on as being really good. Love it.
All right. Moving to some community highlights. The first one we have is a really cool one if you're a .NET developer, but now you can write Node.js add-ons with the .NET Native AOT, which stands for ahead of time compilation. So in the past, if you were going to write like a Node.js add-on for Node, it's usually you want to do something native, right? Either you have a performance reason, or you need to interact with like something special, like some hardware, something that isn't available to you in like Node out of the box. You would write those in C++. And those were typically compiled with Node GYP. Well, now the C# DevKit team has provided a way for you to do this in C#, which is pretty slick.
Now, do you remember that I did an experiment where I ran server-side JavaScript with .NET?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Okay, so they talk about that as an existing library. I used something called NodeAPI.NET, and it uses the NAPI wrapper, but it's a higher level abstraction for .NET JavaScript interop. This blog post talks about the actually underlying way to get it to work using library imports and DLL resolvers in native .NET. So you don't have to use the higher level abstraction. This is like a low level way. Here's how we got it to work, and here's what we did. So this is really nice because it kind of goes under the covers for like the API that I used to talk about how it actually works under the hood, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And if you ever found yourself being like, you know what? I have this really cool .NET tool, and I want to call it from Node.js for reasons, now you can.
Well, and I think the other takeaway here is that the Node NAPI doesn't care what language you use. You can use whatever you want. This is just a way to do it in C# and .NET.
Right.
But you can, like someone is doing like a Rust API for Node that uses the NAPI.
Yeah. And the reason that works is because the NAPI just expects a stable application binary interface compatible with the C ABI. So that's just like a calling convention that C programs expect and that basically everyone on Earth supports it because they have to talk, for software to talk to each other. So as long as you expose things in that way, the NAPI in Node doesn't care what language something is written in. It doesn't have to be written in C++. As long as the right things are in the right place for the calling convention, it'll just work.
Yep. And so they do need to be like native entry points, which is why this is specific to .NET Native AOT. But yeah, it's pretty sweet. All right, next up, we've talked about Prisma before. You know them as the ORM, right? Now, they've been doing a set of blog posts on Prisma Next, which is their upcoming version of Prisma. And this blog post is about TypeScript migrations. So if you have used database migrations before, you probably have written them in like SQL files, but in Prisma Next, you can write the same types of migrations as TypeScript classes, and it's all in pure TypeScript and no T-SQL.
Mm-hmm.
But just to give you a sense, just in your head to imagine it to your listener, you can extend a class called migration, and then you use the API, Prisma's API, to do like create table user with these columns that have these types and this name. And it's not like TypeScript types. It's like a JavaScript object that you're passing that represents your schema, right? But the schema is typed, right? So you do get type checking on your typed schema, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. This is great for any teams that actually use their migrations properly and they don't just have empty ups and downs. So I love this for all of the people that are actually doing their migrations properly. The names have been changed to protect the guilty, but at a place that I remember, we only had a forward. You can only go forward migration strategy.
Yep. And the interesting thing is they have a section here on like, you would probably never trust an agent to write a migration. Review one maybe, but write and execute something this dangerous? With an ordinary migration system, like a linear sequence of .SQL files held together with discipline and hope, neither would we. But Prisma Next migrations were designed to support agent-assisted workflows, so every step is checked against its expected result, and the final database state is verified against your contract. Agents don't write SQL directly either. Instead, they assemble simple factory functions in TypeScript, which minimizes the chances for their mistakes or over-enthusiastic expressions of creativity. You can let an agent write a migration in Prisma Next with confidence that the system will catch a lot of mistakes. And when something does go wrong, the agent gets the same feedback that you do, and it can iterate in a dev environment until it works. So that's pretty cool. So that's one of the benefits of writing them in TypeScript versus like raw SQL.
Yeah, and one like that sounds awesome, but one caveat emptor is that Prisma Next is not production ready yet. Prisma 7 is still the right choice for production.
Mm-hmm.
When Prisma Next is ready for general use, it will be Prisma 8. So
that's right, and we'll let you know when that happens.
You can try it right now with Prisma-Next space init. So you can do like npx Prisma-Next space init and get started. But I wouldn't roll it to prod just yet.
Mm-mm.
Awesome. Next up is a front-end master's course, Create a Complete SOD Clone in TypeScript. So if you ever wondered how that worked and how you might do the same thing, the dev behind WebDevSimplified has a free front-end master's course that's about 2 hours long walking you through this. So if you ever wanted to explore this in depth, take a look.
I think this is really neat just as a side note because we feature WebDevSimplified a whole bunch of times on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have a front-end master's course. That's really cool.
I'll let you know a little secret of the handbook. He might be in there.
Nice.
Next up, I saw this on BlueSky from BlueSky user michaelblack.xyz, and I thought it was kind of funny. There's a TUI client that's a terminal UI for BlueSky written entirely in TypeScript using a library called Gridland, but this library is now V1. It's officially on a homebrew, and it's called TuiSky. I don't know how you say it, but I call it TuiSky, just like I call it BlueSky.
And you only like it because it says TuiSky is a NeoVim like BlueSky client for the terminal.
What? I feel called out. But yes, that's exactly it.
Nice. That's cool. You should try it out and see if you can like automate getting stuff for the podcast, like look at the feed.
That is 100% what I'm going to do after this.
Do it. All right.
Remember unbash? We talked about this as a way of parsing bash scripts in TypeScript. Well,
Yeah.
Lars at webpro.nl has version 3 out, which is pretty slick. It's the fastest and bestest parser of bash written in TypeScript with 0 dependencies.
Love it. That's really cool. Congrats, Lars.
The last thing I have is if you are interested in learning more about geometry nodes in Blender, which is a way, I think, of manipulating mesh geometry with like shaders, Ryusuke on BlueSky has a blog post series walking you through this using WebGPU and TypeScript. So if you are curious about doing graphics programming with WebGPU and TypeScript, definitely check it out. You'll learn something about manipulating geometry and how Blender does it.
Ooh, that's really cool. It looks really nice. They did a good job making it like interactive.
Yeah, this is quite possibly like one of the highest engineering blog posts I've ever seen. Like the blog post itself has a ton of engineering in it. It reminds me of the Red Blob Games blog posts about game development, where the blog post was also like a piece of really impressive software.
Yes, I love these interactive blog posts.
Super cool. Well, I have a Bleet of the week, and I thought this was pretty funny.
Hit me.
So on BlueSky, coolhandle.ebill.club says, can a JavaScript girl be friends with a TypeScript girl? The answer is no, period. All right, I've got a secret of the handbook, and this is a thing I didn't know about. It's an unknown, but it's from WebDevSimplified. But it turns out, did you know in a type parameter, you can add a const in front of it? So like I have, some function, angle bracket t. I can put const in front of that instead of needing to pass as const on my arguments.
On the parameter, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really sweet. I did not know that.
Yeah, I've needed this all the time. Like,
and there's no documentation for this.
No, not at all. But this was huge. I'm glad that WebDevSimplified made a video about this, because I was like, oh my God, I have like 4 places in my code base right now I can just drop this in, because I liberally use as const on stuff because you get the really strict type. But if you want to opt into that on your generic functions, you can put that const on your type parameter.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. It's good cred too, because now you know why they have a front-end master's course.
That's right.
All right. You have some cool links for us?
Well, I have been deep in Lego YouTube, and there is an engineer that has been going through the ringer trying to build the best Lego sorting machine. And the goal is to sort 10,000 Lego parts per day. And as you can imagine, that's pretty tough. I mean, it would be really tough for a human, but it's really tough for a machine to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So this latest video, they go through like how they've done like a conical conveyor belt with OpenCV in order to automatically sort these Lego pieces. Really entertaining. It's only 10 minutes long, but it's like mind-blowing.
Wow.
I recommend watching his whole catalog on the Lego sorting.
I was telling you that we're going to need to buy this thing when it's available, because my wife and my son just manually sort them into small boxes whenever there gets to be too much like loose parts. I mean, they managed to do an entire tub of Legos that are all now sorted by they're like grouped by different like functions and use now. So because that felt like the easiest way to do it, and they're able to sort it. But man, it takes them a lot.
Maybe it's a good thing, because it's like incredibly zen-like once you get in the flow.
Yeah. She'd probably be like, we don't need this. I enjoy this time. Stop trying to automate it.
Don't take away my joy.
That's right.
Don't automate your joy, by the way. That's my other hot tip.
That's philosophy, yes.
And then the other thing I've been really into is the Sebastian League videos. I've been watching a lot of his back catalog, and I totally missed this video about him making a better chess bot in C#. And it was awesome. It's like an hour long, but he goes into a lot of really aspects of building a chess bot and things I hadn't thought about, and fun ways of packing board positions into 64-bit integers.
Nice. That's really cool. I'll have to check that out. Okay, so a couple things that came across my desk. One is a new course by Josh Como, and I absolutely freaking love the course landing page, sales page for it. It's called Whimsical Animations, and the sales page itself has whimsical animations all over it, and you can see them all in action. But basically, his course teaches you how to use CSS, JavaScript, SVG, and Canvas to make really beautiful, fun animations. And this is something that I'm probably going to get because for the next version of Keep Track My Games, I have this really big idea that I want to redesign the whole thing. I want a design system. I want a design language. I want it to have a sort of a unique kind of brand. And I think that being weird is a great way to stand out in this AI driven design, a landscape, I guess. And I want Keep Track My Games to feel joyful, right? And whimsical is one of the brand. I want it to feel whimsical. And so a course on how to build whimsical animations as a developer seems like a really great fit. So I'm probably going to get this.
Yeah, honestly, this is another one of those pages that's just really fun.
That's what the testimonials say too, is yes, you're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff, but above all, this course is just fun.
I'm really tempted to buy this.
Yeah, I love it.
I think we should buy it and have a watch party together.
Yeah, that'd be fun. We should do a sit together and do it type of thing.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Yeah, this looks like fun.
Co-coursing cohort. We can have our own cohort.
We'll do our own locally sourced cohort.
That's right. And then the other thing that just really came across that I found was super interesting. There's going to be possibly, it's already in some browsers right now, and it's in W3C draft. I actually don't know what stage it is, but it's the Web Serial API. And that is not serial as in Fruit Loops, but serial as in SERIAL. And you're hold on, isn't that a really old interface? And basically, I thought so too, until you realize that apparently there are modern things that emulate the serial port through USB and Bluetooth. And this will let you bridge that gap. So you can write a web app that can talk to stuff in the physical world, because microcontrollers like Arduino and 3D printers are presented as serial devices, even though they use Bluetooth or they use USB. And so they have a bunch of examples of pretty big apps that have a lot of weird setup that you have to do, just because it's really hard to get an Electron app to talk to these devices. There's a bunch of configuration you have to do. And so this will just greatly simplify that user experience so that they can actually just run on the web and, obviously in Electron, but they don't need to do a weird bunch of configuration to talk to these devices. So I thought that was really cool.
If you need to talk to some real ancient hardware or some mainframes or old printers or BBC micros, basically there's a whole generation of old hardware that knows how to speak serial. So this unlocks a lot of access to technology that you'd normally not be able to talk to from JavaScript, which is wild to think about.
Yeah. So I was just checking because I was curious where you can even do this right now. And it looks like it's only Chromium after Chrome 89. So that includes Chrome Edge. And it also looks like it's supported on Opera too, the latest Opera version. But no Safari, no Firefox, none of the mobile browsers at all, which kind of makes sense. This is probably a desktop only type thing. But yeah, pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah. And this does strike me as something that might be useful for manufacturing and other plant floor devices. If you're building an Electron app, for example, and you need to have a pane of glass that's going to talk to a peripheral that's, ancient or supports ancient protocols. This seems like a very useful thing.
Nice. Well, it's time for the Minnesota long goodbye.
Long goodbye.
What's crossing your mind right now?
I am excited for TypeScript 7.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I want it now.
Me too. Why don't we go get it now?
Let's go get it now. Let's right off into the sunset and go get it now.
I think that I have the editor extension already in VS Code enabled. I think I do, but I'd have to go check that.
Yeah, I will go report back. I know I've said that I would do this before, but I'll really do it now. I need to figure out how to turn this on in NeoVim so I can get the editor tooling uh, right quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be interesting because you need like a special plugin for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need a LSP like the language server protocol, which it seems like TypeScript Go now is actually implementing, because before this whole endeavor, it actually predated the VS Code language server protocol, which is now the de facto language server protocol that basically everything uses, including NeoVim. And it had its own like custom implementation. And it's actually it sounds complicated, but it's actually not that crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You're just talking over a file descriptor and you're writing text to a file and then it's responding with text. So it's, you'd be like, oh, is it HTTP? I mean, it could be, but it's as simple as, hey, I'm going to shoot some text at this process and it's going to shoot text back at me. There's a really good video about implementing an LSP by TJ DeVries on YouTube. I'll have to go find the video. But if you look up TJ DeVries, he's got a really good video about how language servers work. And he does a really simple one for the purposes of putting it in NeoVim. But yeah, I really want to try that out.
Yeah, I too would like to try out TypeScript 7. Now, and I think this is where sort of the real world meets like the theoretical, which is, yes, you could use the TSGO compiler, but I think that a lot of app devs are using build tools right now, and those tools need to be able to support TSGO. So, for example, I just searched as we were talking whether or not RSpec supports TSGO, and the answer is no, not yet. So, even if I wanted to use TypeScript Go right now, I'd have to wait until RSpec adds support for it. And again, they're saying that maybe they need to wait until there's an actual JavaScript API, right? So, and that won't be till TypeScript 7.1. So realistically, I'm probably not going to be able to adopt it in my app, like in production, until they figure that out. Now, there's a difference between the checker to do type checking versus like the compilation. And right now they're using SWC to do the compilation for TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know yet whether I can actually use TSGO.
Yeah, I think like for a lot of these tools like TypeScriptToLua and I think AssemblyScript also, they're going to need to wait for the programmatic interface to be available because they're doing a lot of stuff that's related to, as far as I know, the abstract syntax tree and doing code generation. So I think that's going to necessitate some interactivity with the compiler data structures itself.
Yes. I think what could be interesting, this would be feedback for the team really, is that somewhere in the README of TypeScript 7 or somewhere documented, there should be like what tools have implemented support for it. Because I know there's like TSGO lint or something like that is kind of experimental. And we've talked to Josh recently about experimenting with TSGO for linting and stuff. But I haven't really seen too much work in progress for like, if you want to use this with V8 or you want to use it with TS down or something like that. I think we still have to wait until that API comes for us to really use it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how TSGO lint did it. Like they must have had to do a shim into TypeScript Go itself, right, in order to make it work. I feel like that was the thing.
Yeah, we talked to Josh briefly about this, but didn't go into too much low-level detail. But Avred done a whole bunch of research into how to do it. And I think I remember reading that he tried IPC, that interprocess communication, and that was slow. And so he did something else. But I only read the too long, didn't read. So like I don't know exactly what he did to get it to work. But I think he was still researching how that might work. Anyway, yeah. So I would like to use TypeScript Go, but I do think that I'm probably going to be hamstrung by the build tools that I have right now to be able to adopt it. I think for Excalibur, it's much more likely that we could adopt TypeScript 7 sooner because we are using the raw TSC right now.
Yeah. And this might actually be a good opportunity for us to like get rid of enums, do the full strict, because there are good chunks of the source code that aren't in strict. We've been like the slow iterative TS configs per directory to light up strict. And the reason is because Excalibur predates the strict mode. So a lot of it was written without strict. So that's fun fact.
Well, when we've been talking about like when Excalibur is pretty much ready for 1.0, but I actually now I wonder either this needs to come before 1.0, like the port to 7, or it needs to be part of like 2.0 because it's probably going to be breaking changes to migrate is my guess.
Yeah, I think certainly we can make it with the already released TypeScript 6. So the behavior I think is supposed to be identical. So like I think we could already cut like boiler. I think we're pretty much feature complete there. I think there's only a small amount of new things we want to add and a small amount of changes we want to make. But if you wanted to make games for production right now, I think you totally could and feel pretty safe doing so. Like there's nothing has crept up that's been like, whoa, what's that all about? We've been doing it for more than 10 years. So we've seen everything.
Yep. Just got to slap that 1.0 on.
Yeah, we just gotta like across the chasm.
I think there's more
it's a psychological problem that I have of putting 1.0 on.
There's work to do that really has nothing to do with the engine and everything to do with everything surrounding it.
That's right.
To get ready for 1.0.
Yeah.
Such as redoing the website or improving it or adding more docs and things like that. But I think we just need to ship it and then we can take care of that stuff as it goes.
Yeah, for sure. And part of me is like, I really want to get our type doc situation, our doc generation into like a better spot that's more like maintainable. Because right now it's using patch package and some really dodgy JavaScript to make TypeDoc dance for us.
Yep.
And also work in Docusaurus. Hey, if you're a Docusaurus dev out there, help.
That would be Sebastian. We should actually have Sebastian on the podcast to interview him about Docusaurus in general.
Yeah. I would love a more Docusaurus official marriage.
That would be cool. Yeah. So I think that's what I'm hopeful for. Maybe in the new world for TypeScript 7, like just thinking ahead to TypeScript 7.1, we're going to get API access, hopefully planned for that release. And then maybe we can start to build some more like, I don't know, integrated tools around TypeScript. Because, I mean, Anders, when he was asked, like, what do you think the future of TypeScript really is, like after this, especially the Go release, he's like, well, I don't really see too much changing in the language itself. So I think more of the change is going to be around the ecosystem, right? And that's what we're here for. And I would love to see just like a really frictionless DX for doc generation. That's really all that we're asking for.
Yeah, that would be super cool. Like something like how npmx is doing it. I think they're cribbing from the Deno doc generation, if I'm not mistaken. But npmx, like I just pulled open the doc generation, like automatic. Like it read our source and our JS doc comments, and it did a stupendous job.
Yeah.
Just out of the box. So cool. None of our link tags work, like the @API link, but I'll forgive them for that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is like it's not just like take in the source code and output like a static site. I'm talking about like it should be able to work like a headless integration that should work across frameworks. Like it doesn't matter if you want to use Astro, you want to use Docusaurus, you want to use SvelteKit, whatever you want, you should be able to use like a headless adapter that will just slurp up your TypeScript code, output whatever format we need it to be in, JSON or whatever, and then the adapter adapts it into like a standard interface so that we can just write all these integrations more naturally. That would be nice.
Yeah, it would be, it would be really nice if there was, I mean, maybe it's just we have like maybe it's not the internal tree representation, but we have some kind of like maybe it's an acorn representation that we can output.
Yeah.
Or something.
Right.
Like some well-known tree representation of code and be like, hey, doc generator du jour, here is a tree please generate.
Yes. Yep.
It would need to be able to support comments and stuff, and you know, other stuff.
There's a lot of nuance with it, which is why it's hard right now.
Yeah. You know, like my favorite 4-letter word, just, and easy.
Yep.
Those are, anytime I hear those, I'm like, it's going to be nothing but, or anything but those two things.
And I think like the ultimate test for me is that integration with the doc framework itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this before, where in the user-facing docs, which is, DocuSource core, let's say you have your MDX file, that's like your user-facing documentation file. How do you link to an API symbol, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we solved this problem, but we had to do it ourselves.
Yeah, we wrote our own custom plugin.
Yeah, I wrote my own custom plugin, and it uses it, and it depends on TypeDoc, right? So it does use the TypeDoc JSON representation. It basically indexes all the symbols, and then it uses some heuristics because it's not easy to get this to work. It uses heuristics to figure out what you mean, because you can use like a general symbol name. So I could say actor, right? But what if you export actor in two different places, like a class named actor? You could do that in JavaScript, and you can do that in your code base. And now the tool doesn't know, like, which actor do you mean, right? So I use heuristics to figure out what it means. So in that case, it probably will use the first one that it finds. Or you can fully qualify a symbol name to get it to be more specific, right? So I have this list of heuristics that it goes through to try to match. But but I don't want to maintain something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to change, and it's broken now. Like, we can't upgrade until that gets fixed.
Yeah, part of the problem is TypeDoc itself is pretty brittle while it's upgrading. And, our fault, because it's a 0 dot, right? They can make breaking changes as much as they want, but it does make it pretty challenging to stay on the latest TypeScript, because they only have a window of TypeScript major versions that they support and minor versions that they support. So, and we are woefully outside that window. So we are locked to, like, I think a couple-year-old version of TypeDoc. So that actually is preventing us from easily upgrading, unless we wanted to do something wild and run like 2 versions of TypeScript, which sounds like a bad idea, where we run like one to produce.
Well, and I specifically avoided that, right? Because we want the docs to represent whatever version of TypeScript we're using for the engine core.
Exactly.
They should match, right?
Yeah. And a lot of we have like Shiki interactive documents too, and that relies on it being the same as well.
Yep.
And for one, it's a kind of integration test, because we know if we've done an API breaking change, because all of our Shiki documentation in our prose will break.
Yep. It'll throw compiler errors, which is perfect. That's what I want.
Yep. Because that was a huge problem for us in the past when we were doing just Jekyll hand-authored prose. The examples would quickly get out of date, or they'd break and we wouldn't notice. So that's one advantage of using like the Shiki 2/ like code snippets, because they actually type check.
Yep, exactly. Cool. All right. Well, it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, that was definitely a long goodbye.
Alrighty. Good nighty.
Good nighty.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on BlueSky. I'm at Kamranicus.com, and Eric is at EricOnerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at TypeScript.fm.